This is Trend Following Radio, where great thinking comes alive. Nobel Prize winners, legendary traders, best-selling authors, and the pros that know what drive us irrational human beings. I am your host, Michael Covel. Not filtered, raw, honest. That's my passion. Nothing like a little travel to rock the soul, to wake you up, to bring one back to life. Last few weeks of November, first few weeks of December, and then planned into early January, I will have myself in Saigon, Hoi An, Vietnam, Tokyo, New York, Baltimore, Washington, D.C., Northern Virginia, San Diego, and quick layovers in San Francisco and Hong Kong. It looks good on paper. It's a little tiring. It looks good on paper, though. In all seriousness, I love those moments of just throwing oneself into the fire. The wake-up call. One great piece of advice that I can give, if you've never traveled to Asia, make Tokyo your first stop. Especially if coming from North America, it is the first stop. I would literally just go to Tokyo now to visit a department store. There's one there called Isetan. Not only is the service amazing, the selection amazing, there is a food court in the bottom of the Isetan department store in Shinjuku, in Tokyo, that is so awesome. You've never seen anything like it. Perfection in food. The Japanese win, and we are all just trying to play catch up. I'm sorry, that's the way it is. More Michelin star restaurants in Japan than any other place in the world. We're just playing catch up. You think that's crazy? To actually get on a plane, you've never been to Tokyo, to get on a plane to just go eat in a city like Tokyo? Actually, it's crazy not to do it. Moving away from the fun stuff, my current travels around the world, let me go into my New York experience. I stopped in New York City one day, Wall Street, Central Park South, and Bloomberg headquarters, meeting with Peter Borsch, Larry Hite, and Barry Ritholtz. I had lunch with Larry right near his house. What a great view overlooking Central Park South. And I'm not going to try to imitate Larry's accent, but as we were sitting there looking over one of the most spectacular views, even though it's the winter and some of the greenery is not there, that Central Park South view from about 20 floors up is absolutely fabulous. And Larry said, looking at me with this great view, not bad for a kid from Brooklyn. And I said, Larry, damn straight, not bad. Not bad at all. We went to a little Italian restaurant around the corner. And Larry started talking about goals. You have to set the goal. If you don't know where you're going, how the hell can you get there? You have to write it down, either in your mind or a piece of paper. Larry clearly wanted to get rich. He's achieved that goal quite nicely. As he said, for a kid from Brooklyn who's made over $100 million, simple rules were the key to his success. Simple rules and steely discipline. Everybody wants to make it complicated. The latest and greatest. But I feel fortunate because when a guy like Larry Hite lets me into his house to have lunch, to see, here's the man who's made it. He's made that number, and he knows this. He's made the number that is extraordinary. the number that mere mortals want to shoot for. He paints a picture, however, that it's attainable. Larry's always grounded. I just feel very fortunate to have the opportunity to sit down and share back and forth. Two guys just picking each other apart, picking ideas apart, and trying to figure out the best way to get ahead. Today I want to go into a subject that's right in the spirit of Larry Height's thinking. Goals. And data. I mean, you have to be able to measure. Data is how you measure. I look at my world, the trend following world. Performance data and the psychological research, the psychological data behind it, encompasses the strategy of trend following trading. What do I mean? My books would not have existed. Hell, my business career would not have existed if I did not have the opportunity to dig into this trend following performance data spanning decades across various managers, different countries, but all trend following. That data is the backbone, the spine of belief. When you see it, you know there's something there. Even if you don't know how that trend following performance came to exist, when you see manager or trader upon trader, all correlated, making money in the same months, losing money in the same months, the same types of winning streaks. You don't have to know why that happened. You just know that the data is telling you something. Now, after all that data is examined, some brilliant people, intentionally or unintentionally, have figured out how that data came to exist. Why does trend following performance data exist? Many of those brilliant minds have been on my podcast. I implore you to go listen to their episodes. Daniel Kahneman, Vernon Smith, Michael Mauboussin, Brett Steenbarger, Charles Faulkner, Van Tharp. There's so many. And their work, they explain, they put the narrative on why the performance data for David Harding, Bill Dunn, a guy like John Henry who bought the Red Sox, Larry Height, all the Turtles, their psychological work, their narrative gives the understanding of what that data is. Now, some people are going to look at that data and just not even care what the psychological is behind it. They're going to say, give me my system, let me go. I would argue that knowing the psychological behind it, and isn't this what Ed Seykota has done so brilliantly? The trading tribe. Ed is a super smart guy when it comes to math, but he knows it's the psych side. You can write down the rules to the system. You can have the system. You can have every system under the sun. But if you can't understand the rock solid discipline, the psychological makeup, like my lunch partner from recently, Larry Height, if that's not deep in your gut, it won't work. The pieces won't come together. The results will not appear. What I love to do with this podcast is to take examples from outside of this trend following world of mine and paint pictures to give validity, to give foundation, structure, spine to trend following. Today, I want to examine one particular element of trend following, which is data, performance data, believing in numbers. I want to talk about some numbers today that can't be argued with. Try as you might, and some of you might, you cannot argue with the numbers. America's most popular sport is football. Hands down. We hear all the stories, the Tom Brady's, the Peyton Mannings, the Aaron Rodgers, they all make fortunes. They've made fortunes over $100 million, over maybe $200 million in their career. If you're a father raising a son and your son happens to be a good running back, strong linebacker, whatnot, pee-wee football, high school football, this is the dream. Professional football. You know what the data says? The data says every kid in America should stop playing professional football for two reasons. First, the data has come out on concussions. You're absolutely probably not going to know your name by the age of 50 if you play football for any duration. Number two, if you want to make the most money possible, guaranteed, there is only one sport. Well, basketball is pretty damn good. But for this example, this comparison, where I'm going to go today, baseball's it. Baseball is guaranteed money. Average players in baseball get guaranteed money on a par with generational talents in pro football. And they're not usually even guaranteed, except for the year they're playing. The data says this. The data says I'm right. Now, what's interesting, many people might look at that data and say, I don't care. I still want my kid to play football. Or even the young person might say, I still want to play football. I want to be the next Tom Brady. The data says you're working against yourself. The data says move to another sport. If you have the ability to compete on a professional level, you're in the wrong damn sport. Look, the NBA is tough. The NBA is generally skewed towards guys that are tall. There's a huge physical element. Baseball is not like that. There's plenty of guys in baseball that are below 6 feet tall. Sure, there's some of the greatest athletes in baseball, some very tall guys, but baseball's got variance. And again, as I'm about to read in this article excerpt from the Washington Post, baseball has the numbers behind it. That's my whole point today. Believe in the numbers. Don't trust your gut. Look at the numbers. I want to read some excerpts from Washington Post article. Jeff Samardzija just proved athletes would be foolish to pick the NFL over Major League Baseball. Quoting, by any measure, Calvin Johnson is a football star. Since he entered the NFL in 2007, no one has gained more yards receiving in total or per game. No one has caught more touchdown passes. If his career ended tomorrow, he would be ushered straight to Canton, Ohio, to the Pro Football Hall of Fame, arguably the best wide receiver of his era. Hey man, no one's disagreeing with that. Anyone that knows anything about football, you know that's a true statement, what I just read. Continuing. By some measures, Jeff Samardzija is a so-so baseball player. Since he became a full-time starting pitcher in 2012, his ERA ranks 63rd of the 90 men who have thrown at least 500 innings. Last year, as he approached free agency, he allowed more hits and runs than any pitcher in the game. His career record, 47 wins, 61 losses. He's below 500, for those of you counting. These two, it would seem, have nothing to do with each other, except in the fall of 2006, they were two of the best wide receivers in college football, each voted an All-American by the Football Writers Association of America. And one other thing, through this season, Calvin Johnson will have collected $113 million in earnings, making him one of the wealthiest non-quarterbacks in league history. Jeff Samardzija, by virtue of the 5-year contract he just signed with the San Francisco Giants, is guaranteed to have earnings of $122 million and have another chance to dip into the till in free agency when he will be 36 years old. So a run-of-the-mill, if reliable baseball player surpasses a generational football talent in money paid, ? That's reality, even in a world in which football has surpassed baseball in almost every measure of popularity. In this baseball offseason, when each day seems to bring news of another baubles and diamonds contract, it's worth discussing the paths to athletic success. Samardzija, back in 2006 to 7, was the rare athlete who had the choice between two sports. An exception, no doubt. But dozens of others could make that choice at an earlier age. And though weighing the potential earnings in the NFL, NBA, and Major League Baseball is folly for most people, it's clear where the smart choice lies, if there is one, and it's baseball. And that's not even taking into account the long-term health implications. Let me take it back to trend following. Go pull the 40-year track record of Bill Dunn. Look at the numbers. Look at the month-by-month numbers. What do they tell you? Number one, they're real. They're real. You can see them. His numbers are not just talking heads daily on CNBC, giving opinions, predicting which way the wind will blow. His numbers have made it through every type of situation that could unfold. Every wind that has blowed, Bill Dunn and his strategy has persevered through the ups and downs. You see my point here? It's data that's real. For example, Bill Dunn's performance versus talking heads on CNBC. Data that is real, guaranteed Major League Baseball contracts for average players surpassing the best players in the history of the game. It's up to you when you face the fork in the road of data choices. It's up to you to decide what is reality and not reality. Continuing from the article, there's always the thought that a football player goes straight to the major leagues and gets paid, whereas a baseball player has to go through the minor league system and ride the buses, said Paul Maneri, who developed Samardzija on the Notre Dame baseball team then and now is the coach at LSU. But we spent time talking about the length of the career and potential earnings, and he was getting good advice from several people. At the end of the day, he chose baseball, which he is passionate about. Samardzija's 5-year, $90 million deal is perhaps the best recent example of baseball's financial health and the direct line of that money to the players. According to the website SpotTrack, which analyzes professional sports contracts, Johnson's career earnings with the Detroit Lions through the 2015 season make him the 13th wealthiest football player of all time. But go back just 3 off seasons to the end of the 2013 World Series, and baseball owners have issued 16 contracts that exceed that total. Indeed, the top 30 contracts in the history of team sports, ranked by total compensation, all went to baseball players. Johnson's career earnings would rank him 64th in baseball, just behind retired pitcher Carlos Zambrano. And this isn't just talking about starting pitchers. Joaquim Soria, Tony Sipp, 2 players I've never heard of, relief pitchers who even attentive sports fans couldn't pick out of a lineup, each signed 3-year deals this month. Soria's was worth $25 million, Sipp's worth $18 million. Nice wages for perhaps 60 or 70 innings of work annually. So it's worth going over then, Samardzija's decision-making process, lest your own son face such a conundrum. And the article says, we know, no one has this choice, just play along. Samardzija was recruited to Notre Dame by football coach Ty Willingham, who approached Maneri about allowing Samardzija to play baseball as well. That was so atypical of a football coach, Maneri said. They usually want to dominate your time. Yet in his first 2 seasons, Samardzija was underused, the Irish struggled, and Willingham was let go. Samardzija developed as a pitcher, and he told Maneri that if a new football coach wouldn't let him play baseball, he'd quit football. And that's what provided his scholarship. Yet new coach Charlie Weiss not only agreed to allow Samardzija to play baseball, he opened up the Irish's offense. Samardzija emerged from an afterthought to an All-American, catching 77 passes and 15 touchdowns as a junior in 2005. The next spring, he made 15 starts for the Notre Dame baseball team, and though his ERA was just 4.33, some pro talent evaluators loved his 6'5" frame, the sink he got on his fastball, and his competitiveness. Stan Zielinski, a veteran scout with the Chicago Cubs, gave him a first-round grade. I always believed that Jeff liked both sports the same, said Jim Hendry, then the Cubs general manager. Hendry had good reason to believe it. He got his start coaching high school ball in Miami. His assistant back then, Paul Maneri. The two have remained best friends for decades, even as their careers in baseball diverged. Maneri to college, Hendry to the pros. So when Maneri told Hendry, this kid wants to try to play baseball, Hendry believed him. After Samardzij's breakout year in football, Maneri again impressed upon Weiss the importance of letting Samardzija play baseball that spring. He might just bolt for the NFL early. And as a side note, the top wide receiver taken in the 2006 draft, Santonio Holmes of Ohio State, earned $34.6 million in 9 years in the league, was MVP of a Super Bowl, and is now out of the game. The Cubs selected Samardzija in the 5th round of the 2006 draft. They paid him a $250,000 bonus and sent him to Class A Boise, but then allowed him to return to Notre Dame for his senior season of football. That was the carrot that we were using, hoping he'd stick with baseball, Hendry said. But I told him, go back and play football. Follow your dreams. We'll get together after the season. After Samardzija caught 78 passes as a senior, Hendry realized the pressure was on. He knew NFL personal evaluators, and they told him Samardzija would be a first-round choice in the football draft, likely between the 20th and 32nd pick. So Hendry gave his young right-hander a 5-year, $10 million contract, just the start of his earnings in baseball, even before he reached the majors. So Hendry decided to give his young right-hander a 5-year, $10 million contract, just the start of his earnings in baseball, even before he reached the majors. I didn't get into any of the injury factors, and concussions weren't really being talked about as much then, Hendry said, but I did talk to him about it. If you're a durable starting pitcher, which I think you could be, there's a lot of money you can make over 10 to 15 years. If you like both sports the same, I think you could pitch a long time. That, as much as anything, is what Samardzija is being paid for with the Giants, pitching a long time. In the last 3 seasons, only 5 pitchers in baseball have thrown more innings than Samardzija, who pitched for the Cubs, Oakland Athletics, and Chicago White Sox in that span. The industry values durability, even if not accompanied by elite performance. As much as this contract is about performance, it's about going to the post. Giants Executive Vice President of Baseball Operations, Brian Sabin, said at Samardzija's introductory press conference. Which brings us back to Calvin Johnson. Next year, according to Spotrac, he is due $15.95 million in cash, and he will cost $24 million against the NFL's salary cap. There has been lots of discussion in Detroit about whether the Lions would be able to restructure Johnson's deal, essentially paying him less as he grows older and presumably less effective. He will turn 31 at the beginning of next season, and it's possible he'll only play another few years. I've got a lot of mileage on me, I can say that, Johnson told the Detroit News before this season. I've got a lot of miles on me. Over time, it takes a toll. The Lions, in theory, could cut him. Another reason why an NFL team announces a 7-year, $132 million contract extension, as the Lions did with Johnson in 2012, it's financial semantics. In the NFL, it's unlikely the player will ever see all that money. The important number is what's guaranteed. In Johnson's case, $60 million. Certainly not pocket change, but not $132 million like Samardzija's got either. Samardzija, along with every other baseball player who signs a deal this offseason, is guaranteed the money, each and every cent, in sickness and in health. In the history of the NFL, only 25 players have earned $90 million in their careers, exactly what Samardzija will earn for 5 years of work in San Francisco, whether or not he improves on his career ERA or not. That number, since he threw his first major league pitch in 2008, is 4.09. The ERA of all pitchers across the majors from 2008 to 2015 is 4.03. Yet in the here and now, it's worth $90 million. I love data. You can tell me all day long about the financial implications of being a pro football player. And of course, again, this is an exercise here to get you thinking. Very few people will ever have to make the decision or have the opportunity to face these types of contracts at the professional sport level. But that doesn't take away from the fact that we all can look at these examples and learn how to think better about data. Don't be the guy that compares the two sports, the money-making potential from the two sports, even if you're not a player, even if your son's not a player, but keep things honest. Keep the discussion honest. If your brain thinks honest, you've got a much better chance of getting ahead. If you confuse things in your mind and you muddle things in your mind, and in your mind, it's just the same. They're two guys, they're both making a lot of money, and who cares about the details? I can guarantee you one thing. If you have that muddled thinking, if you don't see the exercise in honesty, the honesty within your own self, how will you ever get to the goal? We have one life. Use it well. Time will run out. You never know when time will run out. So try hard every day. And anyone that tries to bring you down, anyone that tries to stop you from getting towards that goal, walk away. Cut the loss. Cutting losses in trading is wise. Cutting losses in life is wise too. If there are people in your life that are dragging you down, that are not letting you see the full picture, it's time to move on. I see a time when those awake will understand how to make money in up, down, and surprise markets. Whether new trader or experienced, college student or financial advisor, protecting against a crash or just trying to make a lot of money, trend following offers everyone an answer in uncertain times. To get started immediately, send me an email, michael@covel.com. I will send you the right trend following steps to take along with my free video. But if you want to buy and hold, trust the government and trust Wall Street, this is absolutely not for you.